Hello and welcome to episode 5 of Expert Commander. I am Christopher Armour,
And I am Nick Gonzo.
and I feel like this podcast is very analogous to, or very similar to, a modded version of Doom, which Nick is about to talk about.
Right, yeah. So, this is not news, by the way. This is this is old hat. I'm surprised you haven't heard of it. But someone made a mod of Doom, the original Doom, where every single texture and sound was replaced by Tim Allen.
And this is Tim Allen in the kind of Home Improvement. Was that what the show was called? Home Improvement?
Home Improvement, yeah. This is Tim
Home
Allen
Improvement.
from Home Improvement.
And so every texture and every note of the soundtrack and every sound
Yeah,
effect.
like every shape, every sound. Like you finally got this going. Oh, oh, oh.
And the thing is, I wondered if this Tim Allen mod also featured sort of Tim Allen through the ages. So you occasionally got like a line from Buzz Lightyear or something. But no, apparently it's just a very period specific era of Tim Allen.
Every level is a new fresh hell, which is quite apt for Doom.
It is quite, yeah. Whenever I hear about stuff like this, because I know that people modding video games is a huge thing. I don't play video games myself, but you know I'm kind of peripherally aware of it. And like Skyrim is another huge one. People have like mods for Skyrim. Well, my favorite mod for Skyrim was someone replaced the dragon at the start with
yes.
Macho Man Randy Savage.
Yeah, well, my favorite part is when because if you play it like if you play Skyrim, there's a bit at the beginning where you run up the tower and the dragon comes through the wall at you.
Yes, yeah.
And it's just like the dragon, like Batman and Randy Harris's head comes to the wall and he goes, "Here I am! It's macho time."
There's one where they've replaced all the dragons with giant humanoid Thomas the Tank Engines as well.
That's just not right.
But whenever I see something like that, I just think like how much work has gone into that. Especially with the Tim Allen one.
The whole point of modding is that at the end of the day, you're making the game better or improving it in some way. So
Sure.
to make a mod that makes the game worse is special at best.
Yes, and again, it kind of goes back. We made this point a couple of episodes ago. We talked about words which have changed their meanings and things we used to associate with one emotion and now associate with another. And one of the words we mentioned or nominated for this was trolling, because trolling, our understanding of trolling was that it was kind of the amount of intellectual and emotional effort you put in vastly outweighs the very slight inconvenience that you cause somebody else.
The reward greatly outweighs the very, the very minimal reward greatly sort of outweighs the absolute huge amount of effort and timing and planning you've put into to sort of just meagerly inconvenience somebody.
Yeah, and I feel like you know the Tim Allen Doom mod or the Thomas the Tank Engine Skyrim mod is just like such a perfect example of that. But I always wonder like how much work goes into them, especially for the Tim Allen one. Is it just like find and replace and you just like go into?
I have absolutely no idea. Hey, actually, right, this reminds me of something really weird. So I was playing Alien Isolation the night.
Oh, okay. What do you think of it?
I think it's great. It's not the first time I've played it.
Mm-hmm.
But it had been the first time. I bought it and I played it for a bit and then I put it down because I think it's a very much a sort of you have to play it under certain scenarios. You can't
Sure.
sort of pick it up in the middle of the day and start playing. You know, it's a game you're going to play like when it's dark and with headphones on.
Sure.
So and Camilla's a big fan of Alien and Aliens and Ripley and things, so I just put it on because it's a really cool game and I'm just playing it.
Sure.
And I'm thinking, like, this is really fucking hard. Like this game expects me to know things, and I'm not even talking like I'm not even got onto the second onto the space station. The whole plot of the game is that you're Ellen Ripley's daughter, the one you see in Aliens who's really old.
Yes.
Or
Yeah.
you're sort of spent your life on the fringes of colonial space because you want to try and find your mum. And you eventually get a break and you go to the space station where the black box recording from the Nostradamus. That's a different show. The Nostromo has been discovered.
Nostromo, yeah.
And shit gets real when you get there, in the words of Will Smith. But yeah, so I am still on the original spacecraft. You spend probably about 3 minutes of in-game time there, and I'm just running around pressing buttons. I'm like, nobody's told me what to do. And I realized the game had glitched out and none of the game commands had appeared.
Oh, right. So you were...
So, like, I had no prompts to pick things up. I had no prompts to, like, activate things. I had no prompts to, like, your mission is do this. So it's like real life, but only nobody's telling me anything. So there's a bit where everyone just sort of goes, right, we're going to come into land, and everyone just goes and sits down. But there's no prompt for me to go up to a console and press a button to sit down. So I'm just sort of going, like, you guys, what am I doing? What's going on here? And I'm running around a spaceship, and Camella's like, you're really bad at this. I'm like, no, I remember. But all the prompts are just gone.
It's like ultra realism, but not in the sense of being like ultra realistic in the sense that you are Ellen Ripley. It's ultra realistic in the sense that like you are just yourself in that situation.
It's kind of reminds me of two things in games. So in The Last of Us, if you press a button, you can go into listening mode, where you sort of listen, and movement means you can sort of trace where people are based on their movement. So, like, you know, some kind of infected zombie guy is running around, you can hear him do it because, you know, you're listening. And it'll show up by, like, sort of translucently showing his out, you know, like him running around in the game. If you play it in realistic mode, you can't do that because that's not a thing that people can do in real life.
Yeah.
And the other thing is in, like, Metal Gear Solid, where in order to try and combat piracy of copies of Metal Gear Solid 1 for the PlayStation, the code to call Merrill was in the back of the box.
Yes, exactly. And so if you bought the game secondhand and it didn't have the original papers with it, then you were just screwed. You know?
Or if you if you sort of got a pirated copy, you wouldn't come with the box, so
exactly.
You couldn't stick it in. But it's like, so it's kind of like that, only except in order to play Alien Isolation on the ultra hard mode, you have to have the full knowledge of how to pilot a spaceship.
a fictional spaceship. I just want to point out.
Yeah, exactly. So unless you are that into Alien and Alien lore that you can pilot a Solanco style company dropship, you are buggered.
It's almost like this idea that video games have been trying for such a long time, like aspiring to more and more realistic experiences and closer and closer towards realism, and we're kind of approaching that point, and we're kind of realizing that actually that's not really fun at all. and that's actually, we spent 25 years or however long aiming towards a goal which isn't actually worth achieving.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is that games are on the whole getting kind of easier.
Yeah, this is something that I have no experience with because I don't play video games, but it's a line I hear quite a lot, that video games are a lot easier now.
I mean, in my childhood, we were talking about this when you were visiting the other day, that like, when in my childhood, you didn't necessarily have to complete a game. Like, you bought a game, it didn't necessarily mean you were going to complete it. You would play it until eventually it was too hard to play, then you would just give up. Like Castlevania and Dino Crisis and things like that, you know?
Yes. Well, it was really only this is slightly before both of our times, but it was only really with like some games on the Atari, and really only with the Nintendo Entertainment System, that games could actually be beaten, because before that it was arcades, and like the idea of an arcade game is to get as many coins out of you as possible.
You think about Super Mario Brothers, you know, like the one for the Nintendo Entertainment System.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, you didn't. That was, you know, beating that, like Your Princess in Another Castle. Like, how many people actually got to the end and defeated the final Bowser?
I don't know. I imagine it's been out for, I don't know, when was it, like 86 or something that it came out? I imagine. I'm not actually asking for a figure. Oh, right, okay.
Because I know I've done it myself, you know, without the aid of warp zones. But you know, it's a fucking challenge, and that was just on this. There wasn't a hard mode.
No, there wasn't actually, was it?
There was just play.
Yeah. There was,
and if you got to the end, well done.
There was New Game Plus, which is, I think that's the term for when you beat the game and it goes back to the start, but everything's slightly harder. So I guess you could say that was the hard mode, but then you've got to unlock that by beating it the first time round.
I don't know if you had that on Super Mario brothers.
Okay, well, I'm just doing the thing which you asked me to do a minute ago, which is just speculate wildly. That's what I'm doing.
Yeah, let's all just speculate wildly. But the reason that I'm saying that games are getting harder, easier, sorry, is that I'm playing BioShock 1, and like last time we spoke, I was playing BioShock Infinite, and in between, at some point, I completed BioShock 2. I've been playing them all through in hard mode, and I gotta tell you, BioShock 1 is fucking hard.
And that's not that old. I mean, like, BioShock 1 came out, what, like 2009, something like that?
Yeah, 2008.
Yeah, it's certainly less than 10 years ago.
Yeah, and it's savage. And I don't know if it's because, like, you have to trade, like, in BioShock Infinite and BioShock 2, you can fire your magic plasmid alien weaponry stuff with one hand and fire a gun with the other. In BioShock 1, you can't. You gotta swap between the two, which means that, you free somebody, you've got like a couple of seconds to change over your gun, wherein, you can't just, you've like got a little delay, which makes it all just a little bit more difficult. Either that, or it's just a fucking hard game. But like, it's hard.
To be fair, I mean, there are sort of horror elements to BioShock. So
there are.
Yeah, so like having very restricted controls and restricted weapon options is kind of thematically fitting. It's like when you play Silent Hill, like you almost want the controls to be kind of clunky and a bit broken because you're not supposed to be comfortable when you're playing a horror game.
I suppose the horror elements in BioShock 1 and 2 are there. They're not really there in 3. 3's got a different approach to it. But no, survival horror is about not having things to hand.
Yes.
Being clunky and difficult. In Doom 3, one of my favourite Doom games, but the one that got most maligned because it was like not a Doom game.
Right.
It was just a really good survival shooter game. In order to use your flashlight, you have to put your gun away.
See, that's appropriate for a horror game, right?
And that is, you got to make the tactical decision. Like, if you can see where you're going, but you're completely defenseless, and that is a proper decision, that you've got to make inside the game. And that's wonderful. That's perfect. And people were like, oh, yeah, but I want to shoot things. But, like, so do I, kid. But I want to be frightened as well.
Well, it's just like the first weapon you pick up in Silent Hill 2. You're like 20 minutes into the game before you pick up your first weapon in Silent Hill 2, and it's and it's a fence post. Of wood. Yeah, it's just a plank of wood.
And you use it to beat the gimp to death that you meet inside the inside the construction bit under the tunnel.
in the tunnel, and it's just like even as you're doing it, you're like, oh, these controls are really slow and really clunky.
That was a hideously desperate panic, if I remember.
Yes,
right.
It was.
You're like, he's gonna hurt me.
And that's an appropriate emotion for you to be feeling when you're playing when you're playing a horror game generally.
But no, I mean the thing is that it's the difference between like Resident Evil 1 and Resident Evil 4. That if you get all the weapons and ammo, Resident Evil 4 is just like a James Bond film with zombies in. You just sort of
that's that's a good analogy for it.
You kick flip your way to victory, and then literally you escape on a jet ski, right, to save the president's daughter. Yeah,
you don't have an invisible car, so it's not quite Die Another Day level, but
I can't.
But actually, that does bring me on to the topic of conversation I'd like us to focus on, which is you just talked about Doom 3 and how you've got this great kind of tactical option to use the torch or use the gun. It's one or the other.
I'd recommend it. It's very, very good.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure it's good. And you said that a lot of the fans of Doom were like, oh, I just want to shoot things. This isn't Doom. This isn't Doomy enough. This isn't Doom-like. And I just want to talk about this. What's your favorite kind of piece of art that you consider to be entirely misunderstood by its most devoted fan base?
Fight Club, I think. It's probably the most obvious.
Yeah, I think that's probably our starting point for this, right? Do you want to talk about why?
Well, Fight Club is a book all about the impotency of masculinity.
Very much so, yeah.
And also the sort of, I always think, the delusion of knowing things, because like the whole point is that like Tyler Durden is meant to be this cool guy, but then at the end of the book he realizes he isn't. He's just another form of male impotency. He's going to destroy all these buildings in the movie and try and wipe everyone's credit record, but that doesn't matter because he's not going to change anything about anybody who's actually doing it.
Sure.
And he, in the end, tries to avoid doing it because it's just a stupid, dumb move. But everyone sort of looks at him and goes, damn, Tyler Durden, he's a cool guy.
Yeah. It's kind of, it's always weirdly kind of poetic and beautiful when exactly the kind of people, or exactly the people who have the kind of mentality that a piece of art is really sternly critiquing, end up loving that piece of art completely unironically. I also think like this comparison has only just come to me. You know the bit in Spider-Man 3 when Tobey Maguire is got like the Venom suit on, or like he did the parasites like attached itself to it.
I'll be discussing this in therapy next week, but yes I remember.
and there's a scene where like he sort of goes out into town and the alien kind of symbiote is attached to him, and like he's doing all these kind of like dance moves and he's trying to be really cool and he's trying to like hit on women and all that kind of stuff, and everyone always brings up that scene as being like an example of why Spider-Man 3 is terrible. But it's like, you're not as the audience, you're not supposed to want Peter Parker to keep wearing the suit, right?
Oh yeah, the whole point is you're not meant to sort of look at him and go, that's cool.
Yeah, exactly, right? You're not supposed to want him to keep it on because it makes him a badass.
He's meant to be a dick.
Yeah, and it's the fact that it's cringe-inducingly painful to watch. It shows that scene does its job, because you get to the end of that scene, you're just like, I hope that doesn't happen ever again in the film. I hope I never have to think about it ever again. But it kind of reminds me of the relationship between the narrator and Tyler Durden, because like we establish at the start that the narrator is not cool. Right, like he's not a cool guy. Like he makes pretty good money, but like he's dissatisfied and he doesn't have many friends. So like the whole kind of ridiculously over the top, masculine sort of crypto-fascist power trip philosophy that Tyler Durden espouses is exactly the kind of thing that somebody who isn't cool and isn't sociable would think that a cool and sociable person and powerful person would be.
Just look at look at the change he makes in Fight Club. Like, he's moved into a crap hole house that's dissolving.
Yes.
To have the shit beaten out of him, to not have sex with the woman he wants to, and to pull his own teeth out in the bath.
Yeah.
Like he gives up a comfortable, nice house with a decent paid job to lose absolutely everything and lose all facet or control over his existence.
Yes, this is an objectively downhill trajectory.
Yeah, this is a bad thing. And people are like, he's freeing himself from the system. It's like, the system's the thing that's keeping him alive, though. Like, maybe he should work within the system to make the world a better place. But no, if you want to really take it down to it, if you look at the whole point of view from Fight Club, the movie, that he's not actually got anybody there.
Yes.
That he's entirely by himself the whole time. Like, if you take the idea of, like, fighting a stranger you just met, had a few beers with in the car park, take that, just have it to you drunkenly beating yourself up, the entire movie becomes, like, really tragic.
Oh, yeah, it is. I mean, that's the tragic reveal, isn't it?
Yeah, the tragic reveal is he gets so frustrated with his own life that he literally destroys it for no point whatsoever.
I do really fluctuate on this, because, like, the novel itself, I mean, the novel and the film are both, like, kind of pulpy. I'm never sure if they're pulpy garbage or if they're just like kind of an elevation of pulpy garbage, or just like the best possible version of pulpy garbage.
I've never read the book, but I still enjoy the film. I enjoy it on a very base level. I sort of look at it and go, yeah, all right. I don't read into it. I don't see it as any form of commentary on male philosophy. I just sort of go, it's a fun movie where people punch each other with a good soundtrack, and David Fincher is directing it.
Actually, speaking of David Fincher, there's a wonderful quote from David Fincher, an interview that he did. Anyway, he was telling this story about his daughter, and he said, like, oh, my daughter came home from school the other day, and she goes, oh, I've met this boy, and I really like him. And David Fincher says, what's his favourite film? And his daughter goes, oh, his favourite film is Fight Club. And David Fincher goes, never speak to that boy ever again.
Yeah. But no, it's like, something actually. Do you want to get real for a second? Yeah.
Go on. I can always
Yeah.
edit it.
So
Nick Gonzo keeps it real.
we're talking about the whole idea of media being misinterpreted by the target audience. So not even the target audience, just an audience.
Yeah.
Okay, which is always really quite strange. So there's like probably a good example of this is the whole men's rights, get woke, Twitter, white supremacy nonsense, where they use the whole idea of red pill, blue pill down the rabbit hole, reveal the matrix sort of thing, which is a film that's invented by two transgender people.
Yes.
And they're like, oh yeah, social justice warriors, and then, you know, like the Wachowski sisters
Yes.
are like, yeah, fuck off. You know, the whole white people using the sort of red pill nonsense, they are not the target audience for that movie, but they're embracing its symbolism. But like, probably another example is the film This Is England, a movie directed by Shane Meadows, all about the corruptive force of racism, basically.
Yes, in working class, I suppose predominantly white working class communities in England.
In the 80s.
Yeah.
And had the interrelationship between sort of poverty and racism and how it destroys relationships that in youthful eyes weren't there, you know, like weren't there to be destroyed in the first place.
Sure.
But it was embraced by racists to be quite an entertaining knockabout comedy.
Oh God, really?
Yeah, so someone I know works with kids who can't work in schools because of their behaviour.
Sure.
And one of them they work with, and my friend can't watch the film because of the association, but basically, one of the kids would watch it and think it was funny. Like the acted, like at one point, one of the characters like drops a juice in a corner shop and tells them that it's their shop because they're white and the guy who owns it is not.
Right. Okay.
And like to them that was funny, and they'd be watching it as a kid, laughing at it, and the parents would be laughing at it with them because it was a funny knockabout comedy. And it's like, well, it isn't, is it? It's a movie all about the destructive force of racism, but you can watch it and just go, ha ha ha, you're being cruel to people, and rather than the sort of disturbing imagery, it's funny.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm completely on board with the idea of the death of the author and all of the implications around that. And it's true that This Is England in particular does kind of address the topic of race and sort of race relations at that time period from lots of different angles. I mean, for example, the one black skinhead in that group at the start of this narrative, he's nicknamed Milky, and it's like that's a nickname that he's completely comfortable with. That's his, you know, he's an entirely sort of autonomous, valued part of that group. But yeah, I just can't conceive of anyone watching it as a comedy, you know, or just watching it as like a knockabout kind of film. A bit of an unfortunate phrase there, but you know what I mean.
It's weird, like, and probably this is going to be the closing argument of this, because I think that once I've said this, there's no going back. But when I was doing my dissertation, I worked very closely with when I worked at university, I did architecture, and one of my final dissertation was on architecture and social control, and there is no greater example of this than the Third Reich's reappropriation of classicism and German architecture in the occupation of Germany.
Sure.
So I did a lot of research into that, and one of the most harrowing things I found out about it was that if you want contemporary photographs of Nazi buildings, the best source for it is contemporary Nazis.
Sure, yeah.
Because they go on architectural holidays. So, like, white skinheads in America will go on architectural holidays and go like, this is the Third Reich office, look at my photograph of me in front of it. You know, and it's like, geez, that's creepy as hell.
At the very least, with the kids who are really super into Fight Club, you can, you know, there's an ironic level there, but you know, there's absolutely nothing ironic about neo-Nazism at all. I just have one more thing to say about the Matrix, and then we'll go for a break. It's completely ridiculous, as you said, that sort of men's rights, anti-progressive people use the language of the red pill, blue pill idea from the Matrix, when, as you've just said, the Matrix is a film made by two transgender women, and also features predominantly features the theme of a black man and a woman telling a privileged white guy that everything he knows is a lie.
Yeah,
Like, that's the synopsis, right?
yeah, it's just.